Amen. Angela, are we ready?
Ready.
Okay. Well, we want to welcome everybody to Saturday Sunday School. And today's session comes from Proverbs chapter 4, 11 through 27, and it is entitled The Choice. So, choices are a very, very important thing. In fact, as a matter of fact, I call them a huge blessing to the way God created us as human beings. No matter what our personal limitations are, I mean, if we have health limitations, or even if we have situational limitations, even slaves have choices. They can choose what kind of attitude they're going to have. They can choose to give their best or their worst. Well, those of us who live in America, we have the same type of choices, same general types of choices when it comes to attitude and actions. We can't control those things without any limitations. We can be forced up to a certain point. But such a reality, meaning the ability to choose, indicates that we all have accountability. Well, accountability with who? Well, obviously some people on earth, but mainly we have accountability with God because he gives us the power to choose. But we don't just have accountability with the option to choose. You know what else we got? Opportunity. We have lots of opportunities because when we choose, we can choose a path to wisdom, or you can choose the path of foolishness. This is one of the primary messages that Solomon has for his son. Now, when it comes to wisdom, which is what Proverbs is all about, wisdom guides and frames our choices. Sorry, I just got distracted when the dog licked Sarah Jane. That was funny. But our wisdom allows us to make good choices. It allows us to do right, to experience God's kind of life. Now, here's the thing. I got to think about this yesterday. In spite of Solomon's incredible wisdom, did he not also act foolishly? Yeah, real foolishly. It still amazes to me. So I ask myself sometimes the question, why did God allow that? Why did he allow Solomon to make that choice and then display him like in Kings and Chronicles and, of course, in a good way here in Proverbs? Why did he do that? Well, I think for this reason, same way it is for us. I provide my children both positive and negative examples. I can display wisdom, I can display foolishness. And like no other person, maybe, Solomon displayed extreme wisdom and extreme foolishness, which then allows us to see the contrast. And when we read the scriptures, we can say, okay, the Holy Spirit allowed this. So it gives me the opportunity to say, do I want to be at Solomon at his best, or do I want to be like him at his worst? And we can get the chance to make that choice. Now, so the bottom line is, Solomon is saying in this book, he said, look, my son, value true wisdom. Choose it. In other words, make the choice. Now, how do you do that? Well, one of the things he told his son is to follow instruction. I mean, what instruction is that? Well, his teachings for one thing. Rehoboam or whoever he's talking to him, I've given you instructions, follow it. What about the law? He had the law. Do I follow that? Well, yeah, absolutely. Do I follow my dad's example? Yes and no. So you got the law, which is set. You got the teachings, which are pure. But the example, you got to go both ways. How many of y'all have taken the time to say, my parents were really great here and they really stunk down here in certain places. But I'm going to choose to learn from both of their examples. I'm not going to just cast them aside. I'm not going to toss them away. I want to learn from both because I've got feet of clay too. So if I learn from both examples, well, this is what everybody has to do when they read Proverbs. You have to learn from both. So we're going to look at, first of all, the first segment. Since Proverbs chapter 4 is divided up into, not talking about the whole chapters, the 3 segments, each one starting with my son. He's making a personal appeal, verse 1, 10, and 20. Let's go ahead and begin with the first segment that we are looking at today, which is a father's wisdom, or I mean, the path to take. I'm going to read it, the version I've got here. There's a different version up there. He says, I have directed you in the way of wisdom. I have led you in the upright path. When you walk, your steps will not be impeded. And if you run, you will not stumble. So verse 13 says, take hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her, for she is your life. Now, when Solomon says, I have directed you, he's not the first one. Remember, David directed him, and those before him directed David. So things passed down from generation to generation. He's saying, generationally speaking, I have directed you in the way of wisdom. Now, way, the word way refers to a path of life. What is your path of life? Is your path of life to please God? Well, I hope so. But did Solomon always do that? Do you remember there were 4 basic things in the book? He actually recounts this in the book of Ecclesiastes, that he in the early chapters, he tried 4 different things, or the opposite direction had 4 different ways that he tried. Does anybody remember one of the 4? What did he try? Going once? Well, he tried knowledge, right? He says knowledge is painful. The more you know, the more you have to, deal with it. Didn't he try sexuality? Yeah, 700 wives, 300 concubines. So he tried the love connection. What else did he try? Money, 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 money. He tried possessions. He poured himself building projects, collecting of gold and silver. And nobody probably has ever done it as to the degree that Solomon did. And then the last thing he tried was personal stimulation through partying, friendships. Hey, doesn't the country right now, isn't it full of people who are saying, let's party, let's party, let's party, let's have a good time. We need help with that. So let's try a little alcohol, let's try a little drugs, let's try, they do all kinds of things. Solomon could do all of that. He had the power, he had the influence. Did that way work according to Solomon? Now, does anybody remember after trying these 4 ways, which is the opposite of wisdom, does anybody remember his conclusion in chapter 12? The end result is this. What is it?
Vanity. All is vanity.
Say again?
Vanity. All is vanity.
Well, he's saying it's vanity, but his conclusion was fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So in the end, Solomon had to return. He said, I've tried it the other way, and I've done it to the max. I'm going back, and I have to admit that the way of wisdom was the way of go. Of course, by that time, how much had he lost? He lost influence with his son. He lost influence with other people. So he says, yes, I've sent you on the way. Then I have led you in upright paths. The word upright is another way of saying straight path. What's the easiest way to travel? The highway or the mountains? How many have ever gone on a mountain path? Man, it's a lot different going on a mountain path than it is just straight down the highway going 65, 70 miles an hour. It's the easiest way to go. Now, up to this point, Solomon was probably walking the straight path. But we also have his record. And so it's a reminder of this, you and I can be on a straight path, but if we treat life like a sprint, we may think, whew, man, I've sprinted straight and I've sprinted fast. Now I'm going to take it easy, and you might end up forgetting that life is not a sprint, it's a what? What's it more like, a sprint or a marathon? Nobody's responding today, or else you're muted. I don't know which.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Oh, finally. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
All right. So then he says, you will, okay, then when you walk, your steps will not be impeded. Now, the word impeding means there's obstacles out there. So the steps that we take are hourly, minute by minute decisions. Sometimes if it's on a journey, we walk continuously or run continuously. Sometimes it's start, stop. But no matter how it is, he says, your steps will not be impeded. They will not be hampered. Okay? You will run, you will not stumble. Now remember, walking and running are two different what? Well, they're two different speeds. All right? And so one focuses on distance, that's the walking, and the other one focuses on time because you're trying to get there in a certain, or you're trying to accomplish something else like training or whatever. So, but each one can have obstacles. Now, I am a very fortunate person. I've been healthy most of my life, but one of the worst injuries I got was tearing my hamstring at Falls Creek. And the way that happened was I was the brand new pastor at Woodland West Baptist Church, and we decided to have a game of old people versus young people softball. And these guys, you know, look at this short little dumpy pastor. I mean, he didn't look like he's very athletic. And I noticed in the right field they had a guy playing up fairly close, like he's not expecting me. I said, "Oh, this is absolutely perfect." And I sailed one over his head. I mean, ball went flat, perfect hit. And I'm running around because this is an inside the park home run, right? And then, but just before I get to second base, I encounter an obstacle. Now, this is an old baseball field. It's kind of overgrown a little bit. I hit a hole on my way to second base, and that's when I tore my hamstring. And it was like, oh my goodness. And literally, I couldn't run anymore. Just had to walk, literally walk the rest of the way to second base, walked to the rest to third base. That's how far I got without the ball coming in. But that's called an obstacle. And you got to be careful where you run, and you got to be careful how you walk. And this is what Solomon is saying. You know, there are obstacles out there in life. Verse 13, take hold of instruction. Do not let go. Guard her. You see those three verbs in there? All right. Now remember, he had said earlier, he said, get wisdom. That's what he told him in the first part of the chapter. And here he's saying, hold on to it. Don't let it go. Get a firm grip. What would be a good picture of maintaining a firm grip and the importance of it? What comes to your mind? Not letting go.
I think of grabbing a child to keep them from getting out in traffic.
Okay. All right. That's a grandma speaking.
Oh, yes.
Anybody else?
I was thinking holding on to the steering wheel in a big wind.
We can't hear you.
I was thinking holding on to the steering wheel in a big wind.
Okay. That's a good one. Anybody else? If you don't hold on, you're in trouble. We've got grandkids. Anybody ever climb a wall and you're holding on to a rope? What happens if you lose your grip? Well, guess what? It's going to go. So the word thus guard helps keep the picture of keeps a predator of robbing you of what belongs to you. So when we occupy ourselves with lesser things or things associated with evil, rather than building up God's knowledge and understanding, we are letting go of the things that we need to hold on to. So the path to take is the path of wisdom, and there's good reason for that. All right, any other thoughts on that first segment before we go on to the next segment? All right.
Jimmy, I was going to just mention before I started singing with the Friends by Grace, I sang with a quartet. And when we first started, we were looking for a name. And this is where I found the name of our quartet, was from the first 4 chapters of Proverbs. And as I was reading through it, then that word path kept coming up. And so I started thinking about that. And so we called ourselves the Pathfinders. They're the ones that sang at Adam's wedding. Funeral, sorry. At Adam's funeral. And the thought there was that that was our goal, was to lead people down the right path.
Excellent. Well, that's a great story. All right, number 2, the path. Talking about path again. There it is, the path to avoid. All right, it says, "Do not enter the path of the wicked. Do not proceed in the way of evil men. Avoid it. Do not pass by it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they cannot sleep unless they do evil, and they are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the righteous is like the dawn that shines brighter and brighter until the full day. The way of the wicked is like darkness, and they do not know over what they stumble." All right, so Lonnie just told us about paths that they wanted to take. Well, here's the opposite path, right? Do not enter the path of the winter. Now, the wicked, I said winter, the wicked. Now, here's a question. What is the best way to deal with sin? I think that's one of the reasons why he's saying this. The word enter suggests what? I hadn't thought about this, but the best way to deal with sin is at the beginning, at the point of temptation. I think that's what he's trying to say here. He's saying, when temptation comes, don't enter at that point. Put it aside. All right? Avoid it at the point of temptation. Afterwards, by the way, have you ever, I remember going down, these water slides. One time I started to go down and the guy said, "Wait," and I tried to grab the sides, and it was hard because you got momentum going, and then all of a sudden you're straining with your whole body's trying to carry you down. Well, I think that sin is very much like that. If you don't deal with it at your entry point, then you've got to try to slow it down or stop it when it's already got momentum working toward it, and it's a lot harder. So it says, "Do not proceed in the way of evil men." And generally speaking, when you look at Proverbs and you look at this chapter and all that, violence, cruelty, dishonesty, and other things seem to be the path of evil men, and they want you to be a part of it. So in verse 15, he gives 4 verbs that identify the steps to deal with sin successfully. First of all, yeah.
It reminds me of I've never done it, but I'm sure there's some of us that probably have been on a what do you call it, whitewater rafting, that kind of thing. If you want to go on that white water, yeah, you just keep going. But if you don't, you better stop and get out before you get into it.
Yeah.
So, it's like, if you see that stuff coming, get out of the water. Stay away from it and not get into it. Because once you get into it, you can't get out of it. You have to go through it.
It's treacherous to try to get out of it, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so here Solomon gives us in verse 15 4 verbs that deal with sin successfully. One is avoid, means stay away from known sinful situations. Don't get in the boat if you know you're going to be in white waters that you can't handle. All right. Do not pass by, meaning travel as far as possible from it. In other words, don't give that sucker an option. You don't want to give it an option. All right, then turn away. Now, so if you find yourself in the wrong path, turn around as quickly as possible. Sometimes you stumble into something, not on purpose. Well, if you do, turn away and pass by or escape the sin. Now, the way of dealing with sin right here, does this remind you of any verse in the Bible or section in the Bible? Let's see if we can figure this one out. Y'all remember this one in James? When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, what? It leads to death. So does this kind of look familiar with some of the things that Solomon's talking about in Proverbs 4?
Yes.
I think it does. You got both sections going there at the same time. All right. Any thought on that before we continue?
Yes, I have one, Pastor.
Please.
Okay, in raising children, especially when they get to teenage years, the main thing we tried to tell our children was to think it through at the process of when you were tempted by it. In other words, if I make this decision, what possibilities might happen if I make this decision? So take some time to think it through when you're tempted or influenced by other people. And sometimes that would help. What do you think might happen if I do this? What would you think would happen if I did not do this? And if you've got to ponder it that long and it's going to be a problem, the best thing to do is to turn away from that decision.
In essence, what you're saying is consider your choice carefully
That's right.
before you make it. Excellent. Now
I
notice.
think,
Yes.
I think that's like when I was a teenager. When I had a choice to make, the only thing I focused on is what was in it for me.
Right.
And when I focus on that, I'm going to choose, just like Jeanette said. You know, we don't see the things that are lurking on the outskirts of our choice. The things that are going to be in our way when we make that choice. I made the choice of joining the Marine Corps when I was 19 years old. And the only reason that I chose that was because Carol and I had an argument, and I was going to teach her a lesson by joining the Marine Corps. I found out, and that's what my focus was on. I found out there were other consequences to that choice. And I remember being in San Diego at the recruiting
camp.
depot, starting when I got there and thinking, oh, this was the wrong choice. But when that choice was offered to me, all I could see was what I wanted. And I didn't think through or look at what the consequences might be.
That is a great testimony. You put what you said, what Jeanette said, put them together. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So did Carol learn her lesson, or did you learn your lesson?
Hey, listen, it wasn't long after that I married her and took her with me, and that's what taught her a lesson.
Okay, all right. She's a Marine Corps wife after that.
She had to pay for your poor choices.
Absolutely. She didn't make that choice necessarily, but
No, she made a choice.
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
good
it
for
wasn't
her.
that bad a choice. It was good for me in my life.
Oh, yeah. That Marine boot camp will make a man out of you very quickly. All right. Notice this about evil people. They cannot sleep unless they do evil. I picture this and I'm thinking, have you ever gone to bed hungry?
Mhm,
I mean, really, really hungry.
mhm,
Okay. If you've gone to bed really hungry, is it hard to sleep?
mhm.
Okay. Now, it's hard for us to picture this, but an evil person has trouble sleeping because they've not done enough evil. Because doing violence, doing dishonesty, doing wickedness is food for their soul. They have trouble sleeping for that reason. This is the picture that he wants us. They think about it too much, or sometimes you can't go to sleep because you're thinking too much. That happens to me quite often. And happened to me this morning. I laid there at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and finally got up, went to the couch, and fell asleep there. Just do a lot of thinking because it's food to their soul. Now, contrast the evil person's sleep with the wise person's sleep. Chapter 3, verse 24 says, when you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. That's the contrast between good and evil. So he goes on to say they are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. Now, you probably notice this, but how have you noticed that wicked people, or those who are practicing wickedness, it is sport to them to get an innocent person or a righteous person to do something wrong? Why is that? Why is that? Why is it sport to them to try to get somebody to do something wrong? Why do you think? I mean, there's a lot of wisdom in this group.
Misery loves company.
Misery loves company. That is a nice, concise answer. All right.
Power.
And
It's power because they think they have influence over someone else.
power.
Go.
Excellent. Excellent thought. Influence. Hey, I've got influence over somebody. I've made them more like me.
That's right.
Mm-mm-mm. Personally, I'd like to do it the opposite way. I'd like to take an evil person and make them more like you and me. That's what discipleship is all about.
Sarah,
Now,
Jane has something.
go ahead. Who's speaking?
Sarah Jane had something.
Sarah Jane, speak.
I was just going to say, I think in the scripture, it just shows that the devil can be a personal thing, because demons are alive and well, and they have a victory. And he's already gotten a grip on that person that's tempting you, and it's just one more for his kingdom of the evil of darkness. And it's a victory, mark one for the devil. There is something about being in the presence of a righteous person or someone that is filled with the Spirit, that you can be riding a train, riding an airplane, be in the airport, and you immediately can just see someone without even opening their mouth and feel there's a spirit of the Lord in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for darkness. There are times you just know that they're trying to get you to join in, and you think, well, they'll listen to me more if I become one of them. And there's just no compromise for sin.
Yeah.
You just can't compromise.
I tell you what, we're seeing this live on TV right now. It's going on. People grabbing other people and making sport of turning them into vandals and turning them into things that go against their conscience. Remember this, one of the reasons why Johnny used the term misery loves company is because God has put something within each person, a God consciousness.
Yes.
And whether they've read the Bible a lot or not, their conscience is still there. They know It's hardwired into their system, things about right and wrong. And when it's there and they violate their conscience, well, they're miserable. And what's one of the easiest ways to bury that misery? Get other people to come with you, especially righteous people. If you can get a righteous person to come with you, then you don't feel quite as bad. So they don't sleep unless they make someone stumble. And they want to bury the things that are taking place in their life. They don't want their sin exposed. Now, look at when I was meditating on this, it just hit me. You know, a wicked person wants to tear others down, right? Rob them of their God-given purpose. See, we're just the opposite. We value people. We want to see. I want to, like I said last Sunday, I want to see every one of those rioters and looters and all that. I want to see them come to faith.
Right.
Because if they did, imagine what the body of Christ would be like, especially the ones who are, these are people looking for a cause. And I would like to see them turn around and come to the Lord and be just as zealous for him in spreading the word of God. We value those people. We value the potential that they could have. We want that. We want to be interconnected with them and gain from their strength and them gain from our strength. It says they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. Now, why is he using this picture, bread and wine? Why do you think? That's a simple question.
Communion.
Huh?
The communion.
All right, there's a communion element to it, okay? What else? What was the most common thing that you could eat or drink during that day?
Wine and
Bread.
bread.
Bread and wine, yeah. I mean, they didn't have a lot of filet mignon and a lot of other things like that. Bread and wine were very common. So I think one of the pictures here is that wickedness and violence is common to them, just like the menu items of bread and wine. So for lost people, living opposed to God's standards is their food or sustenance. It fills their souls. Without it, they spiritually starve, or hopefully they get a brand new appetite, a desire for God. And when they get a new desire for God, he sees that. And that's when I believe he raises up witnesses like you and me to give them the truth, which can set them free if they make the choice. So again, we think about the culture war today that's going on in the United States. And, you just imagine if they could only see the truth that could set them free, they could make the choice as well. Now, notice this in verse 18. It says, the path of the righteous is like the dawn, shining brighter until the full day. Now, what is this a picture of? What light at dawn is what? The weakest or the strongest? Well, light at dawn is the weakest. I mean, you can see the horizon, but you don't see the sun.
Yeah.
Then the sun starts shining, and the more it rises, the brighter and brighter it gets. Okay? And so the path of the righteous is like that, brighter and brighter and brighter. Now, the wicked, can they stand looking at the light? No way. That's why the next phrase says, the way of the wicked is darkness, meaning they cannot stand the light. What would happen if a lost person was in heaven with God's full brilliance going on? Could they stand it? No, they couldn't. They could not. They couldn't live. It would be so painful to them. They couldn't live under God's light. We will be able to do that, which is amazing. Somebody speaking or sharing? I'm having trouble. I can't always see.
Well, I had a thought, and as quick as it came in, it went out.
So
It gets worse, Johnny.
we didn't get a penny for that thought. Honey?
It must not have been. Oh, I remember now. I remember now. I was watching television the other day and watch on a news channel. I don't remember which one it was, but they were showing scenes in that what do they call it, in, was it San Francisco, that area that a group has taken over?
Okay.
They,
Seattle, Washington.
the what?
Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, yeah. They were showing scenes in there. And one of the things I don't think they intended to show was, because they were kind of panning around, was as they were panning, they panned by a scene of a stock tank. Y'all know what a stock tank is. Big metal tank that you fill water and stock, drink out of. A stock tank, and there were two people in that stock tank. One of them was getting baptized in that area. God, if God always finds a way to find His people, even in those kind of situations, and God hasn't given up on any of those people.
Right.
I don't think we ought to either.
Well, you say that. This is a good segue into what I was going to mention next. Just like they have to stay in darkness, right?
Yeah.
Because God's direct light on them is too bright. It's like having the sun directly over you, then you get sunburned.
You're right.
But remember this, because we are believers, we reflect that light, not as brightly because we still have darkness working around us and in us and stuff like that. But we still, the closer we are to Christ, the more brightly we shine. So imagine the Christians that are in Seattle, Washington, in the area of CHOP. You think that they shone brightly during that time with all the darkness that was there? And that's probably why you saw somebody getting baptized, because light shines in the darkness. It overcomes it. So we are the reflection of God's light. And we are trying to tell people, hey, come to the light. Why? Because you're only good for darkness. And the only place that you will be able to tolerate forever is a place called hell, which is full of darkness. When I was thinking about that, it made me consider another couple of verses. And that's from Matthew 8:12. But the children of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. There they will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And it says, then the king, okay, let me see if I can, The king said to the servant, bind him and hand and foot and take him away and cast him into outer darkness. So that right there just reminds us that lost people are fit for darkness. That's what they get themselves into. That's what they care about. And so the path that we need to avoid is something that looks like people who are literally going to be eternally separated from us for eternity. They don't even know what they stumble over. They are blind to the consequences of sin, totally blind. Not just now, but they're going to be blind for eternity in some ways. All right, so we've talked about the path that we should take. We've talked about the path to avoid. Is there any other thoughts before we move on to the choice that we need to make?
Jimmy, I'll pop in here.
Okay.
You're talking about the light, and I was thinking, and you mentioned the word blindness. I was thinking about the miracle of our eyes. The way we can see anything is because of the way our eyes are constructed, so that that light can shine into our eyes, and then we can get an image produced. So light gives us vision. And I think it's, if you can see the difference in blindness and sightedness, but the source of that is the ability to be able to have the light come in.
Right. All right. Any other word? before we move on. Okay, are y'all seeing this?
Yes.
Okay. We move on to the choice. So we've seen the right way, the wrong way, and now, hey, we see it, but we still have to make a choice about it. So the choice to make, my son, give attention to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them depart from your sight. Keep them in the midst of your heart, for they are life to those who find them and health to all the body. Keep watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you a deceitful mouth and put devious speech far from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. Watch the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Turn your feet or your foot from evil. So now he's entering into the last segment of this chapter. My son. In other words, this is another take notice moment that he gives his son. He says, give attention to my words, meaning don't daydream here. You know why I use humor in sermons sometimes?
Keep us
I use
alert.
it for the same reason that other people, they just do it a different way. I use it sometimes to draw people's attention back, because we naturally, if I'm listening to a sermon, I can sometimes get caught off thinking about the sermon, but get off on a different track, or just daydream about something totally. And sometimes humor and other things, like, okay, everybody wake up, listen, you're trying to draw people back into what's really important. And I think that's what he's doing right here. He's saying, hey, give attention to my word. Don't let your mind wander. Listen as if your life depended on it. So he's really trying to keep his attention and respond to his word. He says, incline your ears to my saying. Now, does that remind you of anything that Jesus said? Incline your ears to my saying. Anybody think of something? You must have ears that
Here.
Yeah, ears that hear, eyes that do not see, ears that do not hear. So in other words, thus valuable information you get that will transform and preserve your life. For example, if somebody told me that, hey, on Tuesday, the stock market is going to drop 5,000 points. You know what I'd do on Monday? I'd sell everything I've got. Or if they said, hey, the market's going to rise 5,000 points, you know what I'd do? I'd get all my cash together and buy. Well, that's just a what if situation. Well, here you have a for surety. Wisdom is at your feet all the time. This is a sure deal. This is a sure winner. So incline your ears. Do not let them depart from your sight. Do not let them. In other words, hey, make the choice. You have the power. You make the choice. I can choose what I'm looking at. Make the choice, what you're going to focus on. And let's see, put them in the midst of your heart. Now, the midst of your heart, how would you describe it? If someone said, what do you mean by your heart? Are you talking about that thing that pumps? What's he saying here? What do you think? Going once?
You draw
Cindy.
it. You draw it to yourself.
All right, Cindy?
Oh, I was going to say, it makes me think back in Deuteronomy where you write the words in your
On your head. Bind them in your hand.
Yeah, which is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, when you think about your heart, you're thinking about the center of your thinking, your reasoning, your emotions, basically your soul. So in other words, wrap your soul around this. It refers to everything about you. And I think it's even referring to the person, your spirit, that person that you really are. In other words, wrap your whole being in this very thing, the midst of your heart. They are like life and health to you. When you hear that, life and health, what comes to your mind?
Mhm.
They're they are life to those who find them and health to all their body.
Right. If you make
What do you
good
think of when you see that?
Mhm.
Jeanette, you were saying something?
I was thinking if you choose the wrong path in life, a lot of times you cutting your days off. You may not live out your full days. And if you're
Okay.
doing something with your body that's going to destroy it, you're destroying your health by the choices you make, maybe becoming an alcoholic or a drug addict or pursuing so much pleasure that you're not resting. Your body is going to reflect your lifestyle. And so that would, if you're keeping God's word. And I also want to say, you hear people say children don't come with the manual. Yes, they do. You're reading it. And so I would tell my daughters when they start having children, take them to Proverbs. And they themselves will start to grow because some of the same principles will apply to parents as applying to the children. So this is the most wonderful, valued manual that any young mother can have and father to train and teach their children.
You're the first person I've ever heard say that. I like that. Yeah, yes, there is a manual. It's called the Bible.
But
When I think of life and health, I was trying to think, how would I explain that? I mean, not necessarily directly interpret it, but how would I apply it? And I came up with the word quantity of life and quality of life. Quantity and quality. Why quantity? Well, like Jeanette was just speaking, what's one of the number one killers of your body in America? What shortens your life? What are they? Stress. Yeah. Stress will rob you of quantity of life and quality of life. Wisdom is stress relief. Now it's challenging. I admit that, but it's a lot different when you're walking on the path with God and you're walking with his power and fighting the enemy versus going the opposite way, walking with the enemy and feeling the stress of righteousness pulling you the other way. Which one is more stressful? Well, I think that walking in the opposite direction. So it says, watch over, verse 23, watch over your heart, meaning give attention to the core of your being. Give attention to that, where wisdom can prosper. It says, out of come the springs of life. When you think of springs, what do you think of?
Cool
Anybody
water.
ever? What's that?
Cool waters.
yeah,
Cool
refreshing.
water.
Mhm.
How clean is a spring water usually?
Fresh.
They're fresh, refreshing.
Refreshing.
Very, it's fresh and refreshing.
Mhm.
Does spring water typically have contaminants in it or biological issues attached with it? That's why it's so fun. Now, it's not fun to swim in, I will tell you that right now.
Right.
It's way too cold,
Oh,
but it's pure. So you want to be careful of physical or biological contaminants that mess up with health. Well, that's what wisdom is like. It's like springs of water. So then he switches the pendulum, put away a deceitful mouth and deceit and devious speech, which is the opposite of what? What are those two? Give me an opposite of those two things, deceitful and devious. What kind of speech?
Truthful.
truthful.
Truthful. Isn't that simple? Yeah.
Mhm.
But that simple reply is very profound.
Mhm.
What is truthful? Anything else? Any other word attached to it? All right. John 14:6. I am the way, the
Truth and the
the
light.
truth, yeah, and the life. So now we're winding it down to the last three verses. He says, get your eyes and look them directly ahead, meaning there are distractions on all sides. Have you ever been on a mountain road where the side is, you fall off a cliff and
Mhm.
then there's a ditch on the right side with a mountain next to it. Falling to the left is worse because you go off the mountain, but falling to the right gets you stuck in the ditch and hitting the mountain or rock can come down. If you're riding on one of those mountain roads, especially if you're driving a Continental Trailways bus, you better keep your eyes straight ahead. You better keep between the lines because there's some treacherous points. And in life, that's true. Sometimes we got those straightaways where it's easy driving. You get the little side things where if you hit off, if you get distracted, it does that number. But you can drift to the left and have a head on. But on those mountain roads, man, you got to be really, really careful. So keep your eyes ahead. Watch out for the distractions. Maybe we need to say it in a positive way. Focus on your purpose in life. In other words, my eyes are straight ahead. God, what do you have for me? What is my purpose? What are your dreams for me? Watch the path of your feet, because whatever you see with your eyes, your feet are going to take steps toward, meaning direction that I take aligns with that purpose. So if God's direction is my purpose, watch this. If God's direction is my purpose, then wisdom is my path.
Mhm. I like
That's what I've got to go. Do not turn to the left or the right, okay? They either delay or stop you from going where you need to go. Then the last phrase, turn your foot from evil. And all I put there in my notes was just make the choice. Turn your foot from evil. All right. Any other thoughts?
Brother Jimmy?
Yes.
Okay. When I think about verse 23, his father David, back in Psalm 68, verse 19 and 20, he said, blessed be the Lord who daily loadeth us with benefits, even the God of our salvation. He that is our God is the God of salvation, and unto God unto the Lord belongs the issue from death, which is life. And then I think about where he says the heart, in the midst of that heart, I think about Christ's throne, the seat. He is the very seat that we need to be in. We need to be in the seat. He's on his throne.
Yeah. Excellent. Good picture. All right. Anybody else?
Yes. When I finished this lesson, I wrote down in my book what God says to us. He says, he sets before us death and life, and he tells us to choose life. And when we choose life, we're choosing the righteousness of Almighty God. So if we kind of keep that in the forefront, one way leads to life and one way leads to death. And he tells us, take the wise counsel of God and choose life.
What verse was that?
I don't know. It was in my head and I just wrote it down.
Okay.
I don't remember where. I always say it, but I don't remember what is in the Bible.
Yeah, I can find it. I was just wondering if you knew offhand what that was. I set before you. Yeah.
Too, I was thinking when Jesus was baptized and the dove came down, he had his eyes on that. Jesus always had his eyes on the Father. And then when Stephen was being stoned, you remember he saw God too.
Yeah.
In other words, I think it helped him get through the stoning because he was so focused on the Lord.
Yeah. I agree.
Pastor
Eyes
Jim,
straight ahead.
yeah. And excuse me. I remember when Carol and I was in the service, we were in South Carolina, and we were going to come back to Enid, Oklahoma, for a visit. And Carol never drove much. I was the one that did most of the driving. And she said, and it was nighttime. And I don't know if y'all been over in South Carolina during the nighttime. It seems like it gets a lot darker there than it does here. But we were driving back, and she was driving, and it was nighttime, and it was dark, and we were on a blacktop road, highway coming this way. And you know what that looks like. You know, you got the black of the night around you, and then you've got a blacktop road that you're on too. And I was on the passenger side, and I was just taking a nap. And the next thing I know, Carol's over there hollering and screaming that the road was gone. There was no road there anymore. It was, you know, and I told her, stop, and she pulled over, and of course the road wasn't gone, but she had come over a hill, and the light of the headlights of the car weren't shining on the road. It was you couldn't see the road because it blended in with the rest of the dark. But when the lights shine back on the road, then you can see where you're going. Well, that was the last time Carol ever drove. I did the rest of the driving from then on, and that was her decision, not mine. But the light is what we need to keep our eyes on, not on the darkness around us,
Yeah.
but on what God is doing in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do that, you know, watch what He wants us to watch, and watch what's in the light instead of all the rest of it. I think would be good.
Amen. All right. Any last word before we stop the recording? All right, then record.